We're having an exceptional spring this year, and that means our garlic patch is already out and growing, as you guys can see. Today I'm going to show you the basic maintenance needed in order to get the best possible bulbs come harvest time. Alright, so I want to start this video with the basic supplies we're going to use in order to do our garlic bed maintenance. So a couple of simple items. This is going to be the first one and most important, which is our fertilizer, 532 chicken manure. You guys have seen me use that quite a bit. The reason why I use it so much is it's such a cheap, cost-effective, all-purpose fertilizer that I find places where I can fit it pretty much everywhere. So great plant food. The reason we want that chicken manure, which has an NPK of 532 by the way, is that our plants actually need to develop some foliage. We need to build the plant. It's sort of like the strawberries, where you need to build the plant and then the plant will actually build the fruit or the bulb or whatever part you're trying to cultivate there. So as you guys may or may not know, the N part in the NPK, which is the first number, the 5, is actually our nitrogen content, and nitrogen is actually the nutrient, the macronutrient that builds leaves and foliage. So feeding our plants that is going to help them grow their foliage. And because garlic is a heavy feeder, I did work in some fertilizer in these beds in the fall, but we're going to give them a boost because of the good weather. So we're going to spread some of that stuff there. Second tool I want to show you, or second item, is this. It's called a Cobrahead. So a Cobrahead like this is actually made for digging furrows, for digging out weeds, for digging small holes. But the shape that it has, the curvature here, makes it super useful in the garden. So I find myself using this tool a whole lot more than I thought I would. I bought it thinking, you know, I'm going to try it out. It's a new tool. Super useful. So we're going to use that to dig out the weeds and clean up our beds and whatnot. Another weeding tool that I use for more precision is going to be this. It's called a handheld wire weeder. New tool again that I got this year, but super useful. Wire weeder, by the way, works by just that wire, that metal wire going under the ground and then cutting the weeds under where the roots are. So this is actually pretty narrow. So for someone who plants very dense like me, these beds are not as dense as I usually make them, but most of my productions, especially rain gutters, are very dense. And so a wire weeder that's this narrow is pretty useful. But in case that's not narrow enough, there's another side to it, which is even narrower than that. So you can go a little deeper with this side, a little more narrow, so super useful. I'll show you guys how that works later in the video. Final tool I'm going to use is this old hard tine rake, which has been around my place. I'm not even sure who bought this. That's how long it's been there. So this rake I thought was going to break or fall apart years ago. For some reason it has survived. We're going to use this for working the fertilizer in and kind of tilling a little bit between our rows. So that's about it. So without further ado, guys, let's get to work. All right, so the first order of business is going to be to clean up the weeds. So we don't want any weeds at all where our garlic is growing. Most garden plants, actually all garden plants, benefit from having a weed-free environment where there's no competition, but some do more than others, and garlic is one of them. The reason for that is that garlic is very bad at competing with other plants. So the two components of a plant that is competitive is it grows quickly and it actually has a canopy that covers a lot of ground, so which garlic fails at these 2 points. So the blades, the thin blades, are really bad at suppressing weeds and suppressing light from competing plants around. And it's not a particularly fast growing plant, so we're going to help it grow properly and give it optimal conditions by keeping our beds weed free. So as you may see here, this bed is largely weed free, and the reason for that is that I already cultivated it this year and cleaned it up. But weeds in garlic beds benefit from being removed on a regular basis the moment they emerge. So if you look here on this side, I've got this little band of grass here that's creeping up. So if I don't intervene and do something in a couple of weeks, and it could be as fast as 2 weeks, because now we're going to put fertilizer there and water and the weather is good, so things are going to progress rather quickly. So we're going to make sure that these guys don't intrude on the space of our garlic. So we're just going to cultivate that and remove these weeds up all the way to the root. So this is where the Cobrahead actually shines. So it's really good at going right under the surface where the weeds are rooted and pulling that out. So see that? It's almost effortless. I really like this tool, guys. I paid for it. It's not sponsored or anything. I didn't get it as a gift, or it's not a paid promotion of any sort. It's really just a useful tool. So look at that. Really quickly we remove this, but more importantly we actually remove the roots. So if you have something that is pretty shallow rooted in terms of weeds, or you just want to go around the border, you can actually use that wire weeder. So let's just see how it works. We're just going to take the wider end here and go here. So put it in the ground and then see, as we actually start cutting from underneath, it cuts the roots out. So just make sure your bed is completely weed free, so that at the next step when we put fertilizer, we're not actually feeding some undesirable plants. All right, so next step is to put fertilizer in that grow bed. So we're going to put it between the rows instead of putting it on the plants, because our plants have roots that actually grow and go towards the middle of the rows there. So it's going to encourage the roots to actually go searching for that food. And at the same time, we're going to prevent burning the garlic with too high a concentration of nutrients. So again, I'll just grab a little handful like this, and I'll just go over my beds and just pour a little line here, pretty light. I mean, as you guys may remember from the many times I actually say it, and you're going to hear me say that a whole lot more this season, feeding plants a smaller amount of nutrients more often is way better than actually feeding them a large dose of fertilizer and then waiting for a long time. So it prevents having these roller coaster curves of nutrient availability and concentration in your grow beds. So we're just going to put a light layer right now. We're going to work that in the soil. I'll finish this, I'll show you guys how I work it in, and then we'll water it, and we should be done until next time. All right, so next step is going to be to cultivate these beds. We've put fertilizer in between our rows. Now we just need to work that in a little bit. One, not to lose nitrogen, because nitrogen, if exposed to the air, is actually going to evaporate. About 25% of it will be lost if you don't cover it once you water. But the real reason is we want it to be under the ground so that the microbes and the bacteria can work it and break it down and give us more of that bioavailability of those nutrients. So hard tine rake. We're just going to go use the side of the rake here because these rows are pretty narrow, and you're just going to go here and drag, doing sections of about 1 to 2 feet at a time. So if you drag for too long, you're going to encounter rocks, roots. They're going to gather up on the tines there, and it's going to do a really messy job. So take your time, go 1.5 to 2 feet at a time. That's it for this row. I'm going to finish off camera, but I just want to show you guys how I do this section here. Same thing, so we've got the exact perfect spacing to put our rake in, which is great. Of course, these are things that you calculate when you plant, and this is why you should leave sufficient spacing unless you want to make it difficult on yourself. So there you go, that's number 2. So you guys get the idea. Now we've worked in most of the fertilizer. You may see some of the pellets still on top. It's not a problem. Most of them are actually buried. We've put them right where the roots start. Nitrogen is a water-soluble nutrient. So as we water this, nutrients are going to leach down into the soil, feed these roots, and the other nutrients will break down a little slower, but we'll still have them available. All right, so we're done. We've raked everything in. As you can see, some areas are darker. The reason for that is we've brought up moisture as we cultivated the soil. I mean, look at that. It looks like we've come through with a nice little mini version of a tractor, but it was really just that rake I showed you guys before, that beat up rake that's like right about to die, or that should have died years ago. So let's just get a little closer. If you go look into my row here, you cannot see the fertilizer pellets, or actually you can. If you go a little closer, I can see some of them, but they're pretty rare, and like I said, it doesn't really matter. So at that point, you have one thing left, and that is thoroughly watering this. That's going to settle our fertilizer, get it soaking, get it to start degrading, and the whole biology of what happens in the garden. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, my name is Khaled, known as the Plant Charmer. I show you guys how to make great gardens so you can pay less at the grocery store while having fun. Keep it green. I'll see you next time.